And here comes.
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As a preliminary matter, this is,
Oh, feeling's pretty busy.
Yeah,
okay, if we could all come to quietness, thank you. As a preliminary matter, this is the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers duly noticed public meeting. I'm the chair, Peter Halley. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons are present and can hear me. And I'll just call off the roll. Let me find the roll. I printed it out. There it is. Peter Kahn.
Here.
Kathy Baird.
Here.
Gary Beller. Don Green.
Here.
Scott
Gary
Ohm.
Miller is joining right now.
I'm sorry, Scott, you're there?
I'm here.
Great. Patty Deuster,
Here.
Lou Bassano, Pamela Swan, Jean Briskman,
Here.
Donna Martino,
Here.
Lynn Filipsky,
Here.
Steve Perlman,
Here.
Bill Gardner, Ralph Kunsel. That's it.
Invited, so. Okay.
Good. Did Gary chime in at some point there?
Yeah,
I just.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a pretty good group here. So good morning. This open meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers is being conducted remotely, consistent with Massachusetts open meeting laws that are currently in effect. This meeting will feature public comment. For this hybrid meeting, the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording and become a matter of public record. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. So we're turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules. I will introduce each matter on the agenda. I'll go down the line of members, inviting each of them to comment as they wish and to ask questions or make motions. Please remember, for those of you online, to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response to any of these questions or matters, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For after the members, and this is for public comment, after members have spoken, I'll afford public comment as follows. I'll first ask members who wish to speak to identify themselves, and then if the people in public could limit their comments to 3 minutes or less, that would be very much appreciated. Finally, for each vote taken in this meeting, it'll be conducted by roll call vote. So that's it. So the first matter of item, do have a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor, just raise your hand. Looks like that's unanimous. That's good. And a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There was one change, though. At least the copy I got listed Tom Dixon as being attending, but he was a visitor. Oh, was he a visit? He wasn't the speaker that
He
day?
was a speaker.
Well, that was the week, that was the
Oh,
meeting
before
before.
this
I'm
was
sorry.
left over?
Okay.
Yeah, somehow that got left on,
Let
at
me-
least the copy I received.
Let me
Good
see if I probably.
It was at the
did that.
very top,
Yes. Look at-
near the very top.
Oh, in the attendees,
Yeah.
Let me s- right now, yes, it was left over. I can take that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Somebody actually read the minutes.
Yeah.
I'll take that as a motion to amend the minutes.
Just checking it alive. It's like reading the obits.
Okay,
Is there a motion to adopt the amended minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? No. Good, thank you. That's good. So starting the agenda, first of all, I did, as asked in the last meeting, invite the chief of police. He had a previous family commitment to be in Annapolis this weekend and therefore could not attend. And then I, at suggestions, asked the current, I guess, the executive director, the new executive director of the Land Bank, Jessie Bell, and she is apparently attending to things with respect to the Nantucket project, which is ongoing this weekend. So we're down to I think something probably more profitable for this particular meeting. That's listening to each other speak, and so we'll move forward. I will. I guess we have an early November meeting, and I'll re-ask both of them. Very graciously said they'd be happy to appear at a future meeting of ours, and so we will either invite one of them or somebody else if there's another idea at this meeting. And so that explains why we do not have a speaker right now. So I thought what we would do is go down the agenda, which basically is pretty open, and start with the SGR working group update. There is no such thing as the SGR working group anymore, but we have a couple of our members who are very, very active in the SGR developments leading up to the town meeting. And so, Peter, if you would start off and just reprise where we are and maybe, cover a bit the FinCom meeting and what amendments to the published warrant on Articles 1 and 2 are expected to come forward at town meeting.
Okay, good. Well, when we last met, I think it was Labor Day weekend, and by that time, if I'm not mistaken, the select board had approved had voted on the warrant by that time. And you'll recall that they delinked the major thing they did that was different was they delinked the Articles 1 and 2, so they would go independently. You could approve Article 1, and even that, and if that passed by 50% or more, even if Article 2 went down, you would still have the guidelines in place.
No, I have to.
The planning committee met thereafter, and they removed, or at least they recommended the removal of the grandfathering provision, which you'll recall said that you had to have rented during the high season at least once over the last 4 years and paid your excise tax or whatever the tax is in order to be part of that grandfathering such that you would get the 9. They felt that that was unfair to those who had planned to rent in the future, maybe, but own houses on island. And so they recommended that be removed such that if you have a certificate of occupancy as of the date of the town meeting, even if you haven't rented, you would be eligible for the 9. So that was their recommendation. And then the finance committee met and they adopted that. But more importantly, they reinstituted the linkage. Okay. So there was, and it's a little confusing to me, I must say. Others may probably have a better understanding of this. One would think that the select board, as as sort of the lead town management or governance, I should say, sets the warrant. But apparently, it's really the finance committee that has the ultimate say. But so they will move the, as I understand, they will move the warrant, and the warrant will go in now with as they put it forth, with the they agree with the grandfather that the grandfather should come out, but the linkage is there. Now, we've heard since then, I don't know if it's official, but we've certainly heard through the grapevine that they've changed their mind, such that that the linkage will come back out. Okay, now that has to be voted on though at town meeting. So
I think that what the FinCom did was make their recommendation, which is their job to do. So what they recommended were strikeouts against what's already in strikeouts. So
okay.
there's like, someone has to move for that to be.
yeah, I mean, ultimately they have to move it forward. They have to move it. It's a little, but I think what will be on the floor is linked, and no grandfathering.
The grandfathering will be
Just-
the definition of a certificate of occupancy.
Right,
Which I think should be interesting because they didn't even exist for a certain year. So there are a lot of homes that don't have them and they
Okay.
never will. So.
Now, all right, so I think going forward, one can expect, you've already seen now, Act Now has already been out with letters and what have you. They're organized, any group that, and then they're obviously certainly against Article 2, very strongly against Article 2. Article 2 is, our position has been all along, it's important because we need to get rid of these lawsuits once and for all, even though the town's position, which we would agree with, is that STRs are legal. It would get rid of the ambiguity. There is clearly ambiguity. And also, I mean, it would, people need to understand that under the current structure, current zoning, technically, and if you take the position that STRs are quote unquote illegal, then you need to take the position to be consistent that all rentals are illegal because there is no provision in the zoning law that allows rental of your property. So this one will just deal with STRs. We're not going to know. So that would be helpful to get rid of the lawsuits, have some clarity, and then along with, but have some controls, obviously, with Article 1. So the question is going to be now, who's, is any group going to be coming forward to really sort of push that, to sort of counter the other side? And one would hope that, one would expect, arguably, that the real estate community would do so. Obviously, it's in their interest to allow for short-term rentals with controls, and they have the financial wherewithal to organize to do that. We don't have any money. The STR, we're just sitting out there, sort of hoping that our work will do something, have done something. But also, I mean, editorials, letters to the editor, are welcome. I mean, the expectation is that the Inky Mirror and the Nantucket Current will come out against. They'll sort of be with the Act Now group. There's sort of a feeling that the editorial boards of those two newspapers, or whatever you call them, online papers, are sort of pro the Act Now position. We'll see. I don't know. In my bottom line, I have no idea how this is going to go. No idea.
Did you hear anything didn't they just have a
They
meeting?
had an information, yes. There was an informational meeting Thursday, and there's another one next Thursday. It was a bit of a sleeper. There were only about 42 people online. It was meant to be, and which is good, and not to be a sort of a back and forth on the pros and cons, but rather just an informational meeting as to what this means. How would it affect people? I don't think it was particularly well advertised, so that's what I think why it was such a poorly attended. But maybe people already understand it. I don't know. My sense is that people don't understand it and are confused and therefore may just stay away. Who knows? But yeah, that was held.
Does anybody know about the zoning review that they're doing? This is the year to do zoning review, right? That's one of their.
I don't know.
Review of the zoning of the entire island.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
right, so nobody else has heard, I'm almost positive they're involved in zoning, I'm wondering where that weighs in, like how this, if this passed before, or if the zoning review is, it's a 10-year, every 10-year thing, so it's kind of important that we know how that all shakes out.
Well, if this passes, I mean, I would think that to undo a zoning bylaw, it will take 2/3 to do that.
Any kind of change, even if the review
Right.
happens and the
Right.
town decides
Right.
these things should be changed, they would put it out as warrant articles.
Right, so
And they'll have
The
to vote on
warrant
them.
articles submission deadline is November 13th.
So that's.
So you will see what is proposed for 2024.
yeah, but I haven't heard I think you would have heard,
Something.
yeah, they would have invited public comment or whatever, and if it's a town. We haven't heard anything like that.
So they may not be ready for next year.
No, I'm saying it's up for review. I don't know. I was asking what the timeline was, if anybody knew. So I'll look into it and
Okay,
see
yeah.
what the zoning thing
Yeah, I
is.
mean, obviously, if the zoning passes here, if the zoning bylaw passes, it would technically allow short-term rentals in all areas of the island other than downtown commercial area. But, with the strict controls of Article 1, it would put some limits on that. Obviously, no corporations, and only one per party, so to speak. So that's it, Peter, I think, for the report.
Okay,
Can I just ask a quick question?
Peter,
Yeah. Go ahead,
Peter, this is Gary.
Gary.
My internet isn't working so well where I am now. So anyway, I don't know if any of you saw the this last week's Wednesday select board meeting when they discussed these warrant articles. But I must say, the discussion on these warrant articles was so dreadful. It was so awful because basically they talked at length. Malcolm McNabb still doesn't think these rules work anymore and he hates them, right? Matt Fee is still screaming about the why. He doesn't want the zoning thing changed. And then they had a big debate whether they should make comments or not. And then they said, well, okay, maybe what we'll do is 2 of us will say we're for of it because Tom Dixon and Brooke wanted it to go the way it is. And Malcolm and Matt didn't. And they say, well, won't that be confusing? And anyway, it was so dreadful. And so when I thought about what should be done, which is there should be a leadership group in town, the select board, and they should be supporting something that was the hard work of the short-term rental group, and that was debated and changed and modified with the lawyers' help and stuff like that. And yet there's no agreement even among them. So I can't imagine how the public will get comfortable that this is the right thing to do. And by the way, when they talked about what's going to happen at the annual town meeting, they said, obviously, people are going to try to amend it. Some will change it, make it better. Some will try to make it tighter. Some will make it looser. So whatever comments we make are probably irrelevant anyway, because it won't be the final thing. So if you really want to get ill, why don't all of you take the time to watch that portion of last week's select board meeting? It'll make you need a few aspirin when you're watching that, because it was just an awful show.
Well,
Make you want to be on that town council study committee because it
That's
was.
right.
Well, let me bring this to a point, not an end, but to a point. And take a step back a second. Our basic concern with the STR warrant regulations, and this has been going on for 3 or 4 years, has been that whatever the town does, it not discriminate against non-voting taxpayers. And there is nothing in the warrant that has gone to town meeting that discriminates against non-voting taxpayers. The select board having eliminated Article 3, which would have discriminated against non-voting taxpayers. And so in a sense, our main concern has been for the time being, and I say for the time being because who knows what can happen at town meeting and who knows what will happen in the future. But we are in the position we wanted to be in at this juncture, and without belaboring the point, as written, this Article 3 that was not approved to go forward to town meeting violated the dormant commerce clause of the U.S. Constitution. The town council, I will say, grudgingly agreed with that position, and that gave the select board the wherewithal to confidently eliminate it, and that's where we want to be. My only concern at this town meeting would be that in the amendments, the floor amendments, that somebody would try to amend that back in. I don't think that is possible, but I'm not a Massachusetts town meeting. I just don't know all the procedures, but my simple understanding is that you can't bring up a town meeting an amendment that is more restrictive than the warrant that was published. And that's a simplistic way of saying this, and that may be incorrect. But if so, it would seem to me that it would be out of order for the town meeting to vote on a renewed Article 3. A plan that we have thought about is at least writing a very, very short and pointed brief for the moderator of the meeting, which would probably be copied to town council, that if somebody brought up such an amendment, that it would be improper to permit the amendment to be considered. So having said that, I think that our main interest at this town meeting is this non-discrimination, and right now we're where we want to be. I guess there's a question as to whether any one of us is available to go to town meeting and to monitor it and speak up if there is a discriminatory amendment that's proposed with respect to short-term rentals. So I think we should consider that carefully. As to the rest of the warrant, what our strategy was, and I think it's a strategy that has been successful so far, was to get to be supportive, to get a legislative change to short-term rentals on the books, and to get out of this never-ending loop of fighting about short-term rentals. I think Articles 1 and 2 deserve to be passed as written, or perhaps as amended. I haven't, the amendments that have been discussed here would be the grandfathering amendment, and I think there was one other that was discussed. I don't think we have a really a dog in that fight one way or the other. Our objective is to get a law on the books that would permit, clearly permit, because we think that STRs are permitted under current zoning laws, but that eliminates that as a litigative question, number one. And number two, provides a structure to start regulating in a reasonable way the short-term rentals that are a very important part of the commerce of the island. I personally think that Articles 1 and 2 do that, and I would like to see them pass. But at the point of what I'm saying is, I think we only have one major comment to make, and I don't think it's going to be necessary to make it, and that is that whatever is passed should not discriminate against non-voting taxpayers. And
Peter?
so, yeah,
Agreed. I think, I mean, I think it's important that we get this clarified with Sarah Alger, the moderator, in advance. I'm pretty confident, you know, that the test is it, you know, as you say, is it more restrictive or not? The real test is it within the scope? And I think one could argue at this point that it's not within the scope, and certainly it's if it's unconstitutional, it certainly should not be within the scope. And but I would be helpful to have that her on record with us ahead of time, so that we don't have to worry about whether we're there or not. In addition, I must say, and Kathy can agree or disagree, but I think the short-term rental group, I think we've got them at least to now understand that what they had proposed in Article 3 is unconstitutional, and that they recognize that bringing it back on will just result in the Attorney General turning it down. So I think that that members of that group who are residents would stand up and object to it. But obviously we don't want to rely on somebody else here. So I think
I'll be there if you wanted me to
Yeah,
make that
yeah,
statement,
clearly.
whatever statement the group.
clearly we would want
Together.
that statement made, but I think we should move, you know, to work with Sarah Alger and get this clarified beforehand.
okay, good. Yeah, let me add in that in terms of further advocacy, anybody can advocate whatever they want, so long as it doesn't have to do with discrimination, being pro-discrimination. And we've seen over the last, I think it's 3 years, you know, the development of two strong advocacy groups, one against SDRs and one for reasonable regulation. And I think those groups are going to have to carry the day one way or the other with respect to what eventually, you know, how the electorate considers what they're going to do on this issue. And it's really not our, I think we don't have a particular dog in this fight, other than we want to make sure there's no discrimination.
Well, yeah, although I guess, yeah, I mean, but I think we want to see it pass. I mean, I think the general consensus is we want to see it passed. And I think, let me ask Kathy, if I may, you know, because I should have mentioned Nantucket Together when I said, to what can you just update us on what that group is doing to try to get this passed?
No, we've got, you know, a media campaign, basically saying pass them both. We prefer the FinCom version of it. But the most important thing is to get the zoning passed. I mean, I think when you really look at it, the opponents don't really care one way or the other whether Article 1 passes. They just don't want Article 2 to pass, because that means that the lawsuits stop and that gun can't be on everyone's head anymore, because they can't keep suing people. So, and that's the only way it'll stop. And just as a segue into that, I spoke with one of the families that's being sued. They asked to talk to me because they wanted to know what kind of questions they might get asked at the sessions. There's going to be a ruling on the 13th by the lawyer. Basically, the ruling will be whether, in the Kathy Ward case, and they've linked both the cases, so the judge has got both families are in the same case, so the judgment will go, you know, all of them at the same time. And the three issues, the first issue is whether Kathy Ward even has standing to make the claim that's in that lawsuit. In other words, yes, she's a butter, she's a neighbor, but the claim has to do with injury to the entire town.
And her, I mean, she's
And
got
not just her.
Yeah.
And that's what she has to prove. So that's the first ruling. And the other two things are they a commercial use in a residential area? Is that true? And also the third one is specific to the Keith case, which is, are they permitted in the zone in which that house is? That's the only thing you can do. You can't say on the island, you can just pick that zone. So all three of those will come up with some sort of ruling on the 13th, which is next week. Now, whatever happens, it'll be appealed. So it's not ending. The only way to end it is to pass the zoning. And that's really what, once that happens, then the conversation can stop. Otherwise it can't.
I'm
Well, I
surprised.
mean, if the judge votes in favor of zoning being non-commercial,
Yeah,
it's pretty hard to move forward as a town when there's already on the books, a ruling.
right.
There's a precedent for
It's a
it,
precedent
so-
for it. So it makes it, who's in control of the town and how it governs itself. Do you want to let that be the judge, or you want it to be the town? But the town said they would appeal if it goes against them. So they will appeal, and the other people presumably will as well. I don't
And
know.
I'm surprised, I must say, I'm surprised. I would expect the judge to rule on standing first, which is always
Yes.
the case. But if he or she rules that Kathy Ward, is it Kathy Ward or whatever?
Yeah, Kathy.
Does not have standing, and that seems to be where, at least what I'm hearing is the case. I don't understand why he or she would then go any further. I mean, judges normally are not, should not be giving advisory opinions, because at that point, the case effectively is over.
Right.
There's no plaintiff, so I
So
think
they
it's,
heard from their lawyers that that's what the judge
that doesn't
plans
make,
to do.
that,
So I
yeah,
don't.
that
I'm
doesn't
just-
make a lot
I'm
of
just,
sense, yeah.
But
But I
playing
hear you,
telephone
I hear
here.
you, I hear you.
Yeah.
If the standard is injury to the town rather than injury to the plaintiff, it probably needs to be both. Maybe, I don't know. Has anybody looked at the briefs on this issue?
That's the first I've heard, it's the first I've heard that it has to be injury to the town. I
Well, that's
always
the
thought it was just the
claim.
abutter. Yeah, I think it's just the abutter, but I don't know.
So
Anyway, stay tuned. The 13th is next Friday.
Friday the 13th. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
When does the, apparently we have the published warrant,
Yeah, well, we
and,
just,
and we think, but we don't truly understand right now whether FinCom can change the words in the warrant. Rather, my experience in the past has been they republish the warrant with FinCom's comments.
Right.
And maybe.
And those comments suggest the changes. So if
Yeah.
the original warrant is the way the select board has it, and then the FinCom's comments are after that. As well as the
Somebody-
select board's
didn't
comments
something
would be
just get-
after that.
didn't something just get printed in the last 2 days? I just saw something come out.
It's not, that will be the final warrant. So what's out there now is the approved warrant from the select board. Then the FinCom
Okay.
comments every article will have FinCom comments after it that will get added. And then after the FinCom comments, the select board, and I think they were gonna have 2 sets of comments, or I don't.
They usually have, 2 sets,
But
planning
the
board
select
if
board
they
was
have
gonna have 2
something.
sets.
yeah, and that's different.
It's,
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
so as a voter, I mean, it's a mess. You look at all the different, clearly the town is divided. What a surprise.
Yep.
So,
Peter,
Yeah,
your discussion on this, I still thought was excellent and worthy perhaps of a letter to the editor about, yes, we're glad that it doesn't discriminate, but there does seem to be a need for a zoning provision to make things possible in the future to be addressed
Mhm.
in a normal fashion, that if you don't pass the first one, you have no hope of continuing on with other refinements. And so do you feel that the committee, with you representing it, could have a general letter to the editor thanking the STR group for their work and appreciative of the fact that it discriminates against no one, that it covers the island, whether you're seasonal or not. And we look forward to the voter decision,
Yeah.
just in a general way to be supported.
here's the sort of the minefield that I'm trying to avoid. I don't think I'd even want to bring up the discrimination issue whatsoever, because it's like in court, you don't argue things that have already been decided.
Right,
In
right,
favor,
right.
You know,
But
otherwise
my point is a
yeah.
general
Yeah.
affirmation of the work.
what I think you're bringing up Lynn, is exactly what Brooke Moore basically stated at one of the select board meetings that we attended on this issue. And that is, it is this desperate need for a regulatory structure with respect to short-term rentals on the island. Maybe desperate need is a little bit overly dramatic, but and how best to state that. And we certainly don't want to write anything that suggests that the law would not permit short-term rentals as is. This is just reaffirming the tradition and practice under the bylaws as reasonably interpreted by everybody since they were enacted.
But Peter, here may be a hook. The fact of the matter is, and Kathy has pointed this out repeatedly, the lawsuits are always against non-voting taxpayers. Okay, so we have two, the lawsuits that are out there are against arguably members of our constituency. We ought to be saying we want to see an end to those lawsuits, and therefore they ought to be voting for Article 2, which will take care of that. It'll clarify any ambiguity. It'll put the control back on the island as opposed to a judge. And I think we might be able to come at it that way, and get the point across that we're for all this.
I have to disagree with that thought, because is the focus what is good for the island? And lawsuits are going to happen. We live in a society where that's very prevalent. But what's good for the island is that you don't have commercial enterprises in neighborhoods, because you want people, families that are owning the properties to invest and be neighborly or whatever. I think that is the crux of the matter in my point. And the
But
idea
the zoning stops that, because it can't, it's still illegal.
Yeah,
you
No,
need to address the zoning. I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying,
Short-term
that
rentals
if
legal.
you start saying the purpose of this
Okay,
is.
one person at a time, and Patty's got the floor.
no, go
So
ahead.
Patty, would you finish?
I'm just saying, I think, don't get away from what the main point of this is to, like many other communities in the country, you want to stop the commercial entities from entering neighborhoods. And the idea of lawsuits is not the crux of the matter.
No, but it's a the point is it's a byproduct. It's a byproduct against, and I guess the question is, what you're saying is, if you're going to take the position that short-term rentals are a commercial matter, then the short-term rental certainly hasn't taken that position. They've taken the position that by having, you can have one, and therefore that is not, that's using your residence. If you have more than one, arguably it becomes commercial. And it's also taking away the idea that a corporation can do it. I think these, these people are going, are doing what everybody else has done for years on island, which has been allowed for, and is also, so that this has been a long tradition of short-term rentals to be able to pay for whatever cost that is to live on island. Plus, it is a big part of the economic motor engine of this community. At least 10% of the taxes come from that. So I think we ought to be supportive and have been, at least to say people should, this is, it'd be one thing if all people were being sued, but they are not. They're careful not to sue the locals because they know that they're the voters. And so the only people who've been sued are non-voting taxpayers. And I think they deserve some support from us. So that's my view.
Yeah, and the way the zoning is written is it's only permitted across the island if you're in full compliance with the general bylaws.
Which
The general
restrict it.
bylaws say you can't have commercial. So they're illegal,
Yeah.
even if the zoning passes because of the linkage.
That's what
Yeah,
we're talking about here, but I'm just saying it's.
and the zoning can't pass by itself.
Yeah.
It has to-
Patty, let me just address Patty's point, because this is a point that we've discussed probably for the last 2 years, and that is this term commercial with respect to STRs. And I've challenged anybody to come up with a definition of commercial with respect to STRs that everybody would be happy to live with. And nobody has been able to come up with that definition. Instead, what the current proposed legislation does is use the word corporate interests, and other words. So to make it very clear that current operations, corporate operations, are grandfathered. So this would not get rid of all corporations, but that no future corporate interests may own and operate an STR. But if you dwell on the word commercial, unfortunately, it basically ends all STRs, period, end of story. Because when somebody uses a private property and enters the market for rentals, that is a quintessentially, commercial type of situation. Our constitutional argument is based upon the fact that STRs are in commerce, because there's our community competes with every other community to attract visitors, and visitors have to have a place to stay, and it's an international market for national and international market for rentals on Nantucket and in other places. And that's where the Constitution comes, how the Constitution, the US Constitution, gets tied into this whole question. So I think the use of the word commercial is kind of like taking a gun to one's own head and saying goodbye to one's head. Yeah.
I mean, to compound that, I think the short-term rental committee acknowledged that the commercial is okay by saying you can rent your house 9 times during the summer, which is basically turning your house into a commercial endeavor, because the value of the property, 90% of the value of the property is the summertime. The outlying times are marginal, just in terms of what kinds of rents you could get or whatever other way you want to define it. So I think trying to deal with the word commercial, I agree with Peter, is just fallacy. It's just going to get us into trouble, because basically those are commercial endeavors. If I rent my house for 1 week, I'm doing it for the money. I'm not doing it because my house needs some other eyes to enjoy it. So and that's been acknowledged. So I don't even think we ought to go there.
Yeah. So anyway, so going back, I think Peter Kahn has the right approach to a possible argument. But this is going to a possible article. I'm sorry, not argument. And that would give us, it would give us the hook as non-voting taxpayers, and I think everybody in the room is pro-regulation of this. There's just some difference as to how far or how broad or how narrow those regulations should be. Is there anybody in the room who thinks that nobody should be able to rent their house more than 2 weeks a year? Because the current thing is anything under, I guess, 2 weeks of rental would not count as a short-term rental under the current bylaw proposal.
Scott raised his hand.
Excuse me?
Scott raised his hand.
Hi.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, please.
Not on that subject, but I just want to make the comment that I hew towards the minimalist view in our activities, that, we should take our shots narrowly defined with maximum power. I think Peter's observation that, there is a broad interest in resolving this litigation issue. It costs the town money. And it's a problem, and incidentally, it seems to be impacting mostly non-voting taxpayers. I think that, there might be something to say there. But generally, I don't think we advantage ourselves or really, hit the remit that we're after when we start commenting more broadly, on the issues involved here. Unless there is something that, that fits squarely in, what the town manager and the select board asks us to do, which is to give them actionable advice. So, that's what I wanted to say here. Just that, I think there might be something about supporting the adoption of a regulatory framework, but I don't think we want to, be broad counselors at large on, all issues great and small.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And the way I'd put it is, I really think that the framework is in everybody's interest, because then you have a set of rules going forward that everybody understands. And right now it's a little bit loosey-goosey. Secondly, what exactly goes into those rules? We've not debated that, and I think that's up to the town and the committee that met and decided on that, and that we would be, sort of beyond our remit unless there's something that specifically adversely impacts non-voting taxpayers, as averse to everybody. I think, the town can decide things that adversely impact everybody equally, but there's a great incentive built into not doing that, because nobody wants to hurt themselves. So I sort of trust in the wisdom of the town meeting to hopefully enact a regime that makes sense. Maybe everybody could quarrel about it, and everybody could find something to like in it, and that sounds like the usual compromise that works.
Well, I think what Peters came up with is really, we don't have to speak to any specific regulations at all. Just the fact that the framework's important and we support both of them. And,
Well, so it sounds to me like there are two action items. One, get to Sarah Alger and make it clear that this is beyond the scope to anything with regard to discrimination. And second, to see if we can come up with a letter to the, I guess it would be a letter to the editor, is really what we're talking about, brief, that would sort of capture what we've just been discussing. Obviously, if and if we're in the scope of that, I think we sort of understand where that is, and give Peter, the chair, the authority to make that decision. So I would move those two items together.
Okay,
Agreed.
is there a second?
I'll second, since I brought it up in the first place.
Any further discussion?
I like the refinement.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by raising their hands. And so maybe we need a roll call count on this, just to be sure. So let me find my roll here again. So we'll Kathy, are you favorable or unfavorable?
yes,
Okay. Scott,
aye.
Yes.
Patty,
No,
Gary,
Aye.
Peter, Con,
Yes, aye.
is Lou Bassano joined us? I don't think so. Don Green,
He said yes,
okay.
he is
Pamela
listening.
Swan,
Who?
Pam Swan, Jean Brispin,
Yes.
Donna Martino,
Present.
okay. Lynn Filipsky,
Aye.
Steve Pearlman,
Yes.
Bill Gardner.
Raised his hand.
Okay, so that's a yes. Ralph, I think, is not with us, and I guess I don't need to vote, but I'm voting I have a pen and thank you. So that passes. So let's go on then to Town Government Committee. I thought we have a brief discussion about this and what we're thinking about doing next, and if people are supportive of that.
And Peter, just so you know, Curtis Barnes is in the room here with us.
Hi, Curtis. I'm sorry I'm not there with you. Yeah.
So don't say anything bad about him. He's here.
No. I would find it I'd have to think too hard to say something bad about Curtis. I think this subject is here because he's worked hard to over a number of years to get it on everybody's radar screen, and the big question is where it goes. So I guess I'm addressing Curtis right now, as well as the entire committee. We were disappointed that our proposed member of the Town Government Study Committee was not appointed, and think that we have something to contribute. And so the question is what to do next, because I think it's important that we have a voice in that committee, in that we, I think, agree with a lot of what we've heard in general, that the town has outgrown the town meeting form of government, and that it needs to have a more efficient way of bringing things to a conclusion than a town meeting, and that the town meeting has become quite unrepresentative and therefore undemocratic, despite the fact that everybody is free to go. So what I plan to write to the town manager, as we were invited by the town manager to put in a person to be on the committee, and to see where we can go from here. I will say this with Curtis particularly, that whatever happens with our representation, we are strongly in favor that any meeting of this committee, the Town Governance Committee, be both open to the public and done as a virtual meeting. Could be as a hybrid meeting like this, with people in the room and people online, so that there can be a broader participation in the work of the committee. So those are my
I don't know what the history is on this. Who decided and who's on it?
The select board decides.
On Wednesday, they decided.
On past Wednesday, Curtis can, so
help
he
you
can
if
help
you'd
with
like.
that.
Okay,
Would you like?
You want to sit at the table?
You want to come join us?
come to us.
Well, I'm here as a visitor.
That's okay.
We have a special visitor seat over here. at the table.
That's a seat.
So we finally did get a speaker for our meeting today.
Yes, we did.
Yay.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Kathy and I had some back and forth notes this morning. She sort of took me to task last night. The first thing is, it's not the Town Government Study Committee. That's the old committee that I was on. This is the Town Council Study Committee, which is, the objective is to determine whether we should change the form of government from annual town meeting to a town council. And there is very strong support for that. Little things that I look at are things like this warrant last year. We're already working on next year's warrant, by the way, because it takes so long. This is 200 pages long. There are 105 articles. If you go to town meeting, the first hour is Sarah Alger reading all of these and saying, is this what you like? And if you notice, we print the article, then we print again the FinCom recommendation, and then we make the technical amendments, and we waste an hour doing this. This is the agenda for the Barnstable Town Council, which I attended, which I was invited to speak Anyone can go to town council. You don't have to be a voter or resident. You can go and speak, and I did. And I'm gonna leave this with your committee to look at, because what they do, the town council meets every 2 weeks in Barnstable. Town meeting meets once a year. This is the legislative body that allocates funds. The only way to get funding is through town meeting. You do not get funding approved at the select board. They administer funds approved at town meeting. This, every 2 weeks, you can approve funding and move articles. You still have Concom, zoning, planning, all of the boards, they make their reports. And one of the things you'll be interested in seeing, and I'll leave this with the committee to share. Each article that comes up at the town council has the rationale, the preparation, the information on whether it needs a majority vote, a 2/3 vote, how to do it. And in Barnstable, it happens to 13 councilors. They have precincts. One of our objectives for this study committee is whether we should have precincts or be at large. How many councilors should we have? What they should be paid, what their term should be. And I think that's something that we can look at very quickly. And then after that, if that moves forward as a bylaw, then we need to attach a charter. The second part is a new charter, which KP Law is very adept at. 40 towns in Massachusetts have town council forms of government. 62% of the towns in the United States, over 2,500, have town council forms of government. It is the growing way of doing business as government gets more complex. And we're at the point where we need to do that. So I'm very happy to, and the question is, are you going to be represented? Of course you can. First of all, anyone can come in there. I don't see this as being a challenge of a vote, non-vote. They've appointed a FinCom person, ex officio. Tom Dixon from the board is ex officio. And I've suggested to Kathy that you go to the select board on Wednesday and ask to have a person appointed. Nothing to stop that. So let's go.
Yeah, we did, and Libby suggested we do that, and we did submit Donna's name.
I know you did.
And then I just don't know if
We didn't allow
they
it, I guess.
deliberately
I don't know
chose
whether-
not
There
to.
are 18.
If I may speak,
Please.
Yeah,
yes, I was at the select board meeting. We were scheduled to speak about why we were interested in being a representative on the study. And then it was tabled and that was it. And I've been talking to Kathy. Just keep
they
on it.
decided Wednesday,
Yeah.
who was going to be on it. And
Well, there were 18 candidates, many good ones. And the fact is, Libby didn't decide who went on this. The select board voted who would best represent the community to serve on this particular study group. And it still doesn't mean that you can't have something to say that's significant.
But
So-
to that point,
But
this
that-
group represents such a large portion of the tax base and they don't have a vote and never will. That's
So
understood.
you're not gonna have a vote.
Right, so that's understood. But to bridge that gap and throw a bone to all of the non-voters out there, wouldn't it look good to have the non-voter person on that?
You want a voting member?
Yeah.
You want a voting member on this committee?
Yeah,
On the
that
committee.
preferably,
on the
yes.
committee?
That would be preferable.
Well,
That's
that's,
what we- Yeah, and that's what we were.
The way
that's-
we
It's on-
were on
it's on the-
SDR.
Right.
Well,
As well as how about the coastal resilience? Do we have Gary on that? Are you a voting member on that?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
okay.
Are there any, Curtis, are there any of the 8 selected who are non-residents?
No, I don't think so.
That's what I didn't, yeah,
No.
that's so, I think it is important. I think.
Well,
we
and
should
I
go-
think that the select board felt that on this agenda item, that it needed to be people who live here and vote here because they're the ones who are gonna have to live with the consequences.
Well, but we-
It
yeah.
doesn't mean you can't speak. And
Right.
It's more open than it is now. You can't go into town meeting and speak if you're not a voter. But in this system, you can. I did. I went to Barnstable. I got cheered, in fact, when I said that they were a model that we were looking at to adapt, and it was an efficient form of government, the kind of government that more and more is taking place. And they applauded me.
Curtis,
Let me just, Donna,
Peter,
I want, okay,
I really don't know the detail of
Okay,
that.
come to
Peter
order,
wants to
come to
hold the
order.
I'm gonna sit
conversation here.
down.
Everybody come to order. And I'm gonna recognize Donna next, but before that, I just want to correct one thing, Curtis, in your understanding, and that is the non-voting taxpayers do have a voice at town meeting by bylaw. And it is the chair or the chair's designee to speak on issues of importance that at the town meeting are to be recognized by the moderator. And then the bylaws were changed, I think, a year or so ago. And what I'm not sure is whether the Attorney General approved these bylaw changes that gave the moderator the discretion to go beyond the official ACNVT person to allow non-voters to speak on, but it's a matter of her discretion for other non-voters. So we have a voice, but we don't have a vote, and at the town meeting. But we do have that statutory voice through this committee. And I just, in case you didn't know that, and that was coloring your judgment on this issue, I wanted you to know that. And you don't.
Well, I did know that. And secondly, I don't think it colors my judgment, because I think the town council is more open, and you don't have to be just a designated player. I really think the thing that I'm looking at, among other things, is we have a very large population who are not registered voters. They live here. They're the workers, the people who come in and don't have citizenship. They can still go and speak about their concerns. And there, after last town meeting, one guy said, I spent $300 on babysitting and we never got anything done. Well, that person who works all day can come to the meeting, speak, and go home, and doesn't have to sit there all day to hear what's going on. So I think, quite frankly, I view the town council as a much more open system than the annual town meeting.
I think we're talking about two different things then, because we're
Okay.
talking about representation on the town council committee. And you're absolutely correct.
I would say go to the select board and ask them to appoint someone ad hoc on Wednesday, and maybe they will.
Okay. Yeah,
Peter,
yeah. And now Donna,
yeah, Curtis, there's no question that, speaking personally, that this is a very important moment in Nantucket politics. I agree with you wholeheartedly that a streamlined, more efficient government, we will be able to get a lot more things accomplished and a lot quicker. But when you said the folks who live here, the residents year-round, live with the consequences of government, we're funding the consequences. We are a large part of the population. And here's a very important opportunity where we can have some kind of a voice if one of us of this committee is appointed. And this is the time to do it. So to come and speak, we're always able to do that, Curtis. We know that. But here's an opportunity when you're amending or forming a council that meets every 2 weeks. I think that's fabulous. But also I recognize that's our opportunity to become involved. And we do want a seat at the table. It's very important to our constituents that we have some kind of a voice. as non-resident, non-voting taxpayers. But it's important to do it now. And we
Also-
are funding a good part of what's keeping the government engine going.
Mhm.
And Peter, just so you know, Scott has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
saw him.
Okay.
Yeah, my thought is, from what I read and what I've heard, it's unclear to me that the board decided actively, no, we do not want somebody appointed from this committee. That may be their position, it may not be. But I think, first of all, asking them at this next meeting makes a lot of sense, but probably more importantly, a written communication.
Yeah.
Saying that we think the advice of a member of this committee would be materially useful in these deliberations to the select board and to the town manager. And we've shown that pretty recently, that we think we headed off a problem for them. And then if they decide no, well, that's, we can take it from there. But I think our advice to them should be that our advice could be useful.
That's what I said. Go and
Yeah.
ask.
That-
You wanna-
That is our plan, and we hope that we have some support from Curtis on this.
Gene's got his hand up.
I just have a question, and I sort of raised it with Curtis. He keeps mentioning that in Barnstable, anybody can speak. Well, is that a requirement by state statute, or is that something that the town of Barnstable instigated as part of their setup? And if it's the latter, then I'd be very concerned that the town of Nantucket can do the exact same thing and choose to limit outside speaking at town council meetings. So
It's the format of a town council that allows people to speak. For example, when I was there were 40 people, homeowners in the area, who were opposing an affordable housing project on the old golf course over in Hyannis. And their representative stood up and made a very impassioned, well-informed presentation. But there were 40 of them from the committee that were there, and their representatives spoke. A town council format allows for anyone to speak, as I see it. But again, that's what we have to work on. And then that is implemented by your charter. So we have a two-part process. We need to get a bylaw and then incorporate it into a charter. And you have something to say about all of that.
I think that anybody else have any other comments on this? I think we have a general, direction that we're going. Donna? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that it is a very good idea to put it in writing, that we should have a representative on this town council study. I think it's important to put it in writing.
Good. Anybody else have any other comments? And then I have a question for Curtis. No, okay. So Curtis, here's my question. I know the committee has not held its first meeting. But the explanation of what you think the committee is going to do begs the following question. Jeff Carlson put in an entire bylaw, a town council bylaw, last public meeting, which was either tabled or voted down in favor of the town council committee approach. Do you think that bylaw, that the Carlson, what I'll call the Carlson, and I guess it was more than Carlson, it was also the health commissioner
And Bo Barber from the fire department.
He's on the committee.
Will that, do you think that's going to be the basis of what you guys come up with?
No, I think we're gonna take a fresh look at it, and Jeff and Bo Barber have been in touch. They actually did not move, or FinCom didn't move the article forward because they felt that the approach that we have is a better first step, but they're both on the group.
Yeah.
And as I say, you have to get a bylaw and then you have to get a charter. They picked up a charter from another town in Massachusetts, and it did not fit the needs of Nantucket. And it would, town council, SEL, John, said that it was not appropriate to move forward. And so they're on our committee, and I'm looking forward to working with them.
Okay, thanks. Good. So I think that, first of all, thank you, Curtis, for coming and speaking with us this morning. It's been actually to our own discussion with some actual intelligent information, so thank you. What I thought that I would go forward to next is
So Peter, are you gonna write a letter, or something? Did we vote?
I'm going to draft a brief letter. Hopefully I can send it around to a couple of people who had thoughts about this for input, but it has to probably go out by Monday. I've got
Do we go to Libby and the select board, or just the select board?
Libby.
I think Libby with a copy to the select board or something like that.
Well, it should go to the select board with a copy to Libby. I mean,
Yeah,
she doesn't
select
have,
board.
yeah.
Okay. And then to the select board, it would be, I guess, addressed.
Wednesday, 5:30.
They start, the meeting starts.
The select board meets at 5:30 on Wednesday.
5:30 every
I don't know when your group is gonna start.
No, when is your group start?
They haven't determined that yet. I tried to get them to start right away, and I got snapped down
Yeah.
because
You need a
we're
moderator.
in the middle of preparing the warrant for the special town meeting. We don't have any time. to do
Yeah.
this. Of course, it passed last May.
Yeah.
We sat for 4 months without doing anything about it,
Well,
and only.
because it's going to do away with people and give a decision.
Yeah.
So no big surprise.
Okay.
No big surprise.
Another reason to have a new form of government.
Yeah.
Town council for.
I think it would be good if you guys were your own moderators for this thing, push it forward faster. And it never is clear who the moderator is actually looking to for guidance. And I think sometimes that it's coming from outside the group. So anyway, that be that thing. We'll put.
Donna can be the moderator.
Hopefully get whatever. So I wanted to go to the strategic plan, because the select board is meeting on the strategic plan. And I don't know if anybody's had a chance to take a look at this strategic plan that Libby
Yes.
circulated. My main reason for doing this is not, is to sensitize our committee to what the town's strategic plan, what the select board's strategic plan. And so we could look at sort of the way in which the select board is looking at how the town should be conducting itself going forward. And as you can see, there are basically 5 sections: the quality of life, and I think we've had a number of quality of life issues that come before our committee. The efficient town operations section, and again, we've met with the DPW. We're dealing with governance right now today, and so on and so forth. Environmental leadership. Gary has been involved in the Coastal Resiliency Committee for quite a while. Transportation, we met with the transportation director earlier this year and had a good back and forth. And then housing. And we've, I think, talked about housing quite a bit and met with the affordable housing director as well. So I think we are, this gave me some confirmation that what we do on a, whenever we meet, is sort of right on with the way the select board looks at what it is going to do. And going forward, when we think about things that we should be bringing to the select board or comments on things, perhaps this would be a good framework. The only thing that I found missing here, and maybe it fits within one or more of the 5 categories, quality of life and or efficient town operations, is whether there should be a separate public safety type of a strategic point. And we will hopefully hear from the police chief in the near future. And we heard from the fire chief, and that's sort of the where I think maybe that deserves a whole separate kind of emphasis in and of itself. So I just wanted to bring this strategic planning device to everybody's attention, and hope that it could be sort of give us structure as we continue to do the work that we do. I don't know if anybody has any comments or what have you on this. Yeah,
Peter, and you know that each of the civic association groups are in charge of doing their own area master plan that gets submitted. Sconset's plan was adopted 2 years ago. Mattocket's still working on theirs, and the town of Nantucket has, it's on the website as well. You can follow their progress. But until all those come in, they follow the Massachusetts guidelines of commenting on required sections. So that is also a good information for the committee to look at as we go forward, because they raise particular interests for each area that are important, that respond directly to the strategic plan overall for Nantucket. And the only thing you should be aware of is the planning department has proposed a change in how these area plans are comprised of people. So for instance, the planning board gives one individual from their group to be part of your area plan, but then usually it's the chair is the president of the civic association, so that's why I was chair. And then you have representatives of whether the land bank has property in your area, so any nonprofit that has something to do with it, and other kind of key people in the community. But we decide, and then it gets approved. Well, on the docket right now is the planning board would decide who would be on any area plan and would take perhaps applications, but they would decide which is being not adopted by any of the civic associations. This is a topic for the Nantucket Civic League, is how to amend this, because going forward, that makes doing area plans very difficult with perhaps not the right people assigned to spend a year writing these plans, or in our case, we were fixing a plan or adopting changes to a plan from the original plan. So I just thought you should be aware of that as another source of information that follows public safety issues, transportation, traffic, circulation, housing, natural resources, recreation. So it is pretty informative for you. And if you're not a member of your civic association, or ask your civic association if they're working on one, because Monomoy has one in right now that hasn't been approved yet, but there is a document you can look at.
Scott has his hand raised first, but then I have a question.
I found the strategic plan interesting in so much it doesn't address the proverbial elephant in the room. And as a matter of fact, that elephant may be so large that there is no room in the room. Which is, what is the vision for Nantucket in the future? And, how do we want to address, priorities here? Is it, that the development of the town is the foremost priority, and any restrictions on that, shouldn't be considered? That may be kind of where we are. But at least having a discussion about this issue, particularly in a document that's called a strategic plan, it may be just too divisive to even address. It's the subject that cannot be mentioned. But see, it is the issue. Where are we going? How are we going to be able to, find some level of consensus on doing things, or maybe that's all resolved and settled and I'm, late to the story. But it's, when I talk to people, it's apparent that there's great concern about what Nantucket will look like in 10 years. And we only see it in derivative fashion, in the short-term housing discussion, affordable housing discussion. We see derivatives of all of this, but we don't mention it by name.
Well, it could be the name is change.
Yeah.
Nobody adjusts well to change. And sometimes we just react to change. But Donna, I think you had your hand up.
You muted?
You're muted, Donna.
Yes, I agree with what Scott is saying. And I think it's probably because we don't have a vision, because we're in the throes of major change right now, like a lot of other communities across the country. It is a big elephant in the room, and it's taken up most of the room, but we're obviously very stuck on the STR issue, rightfully so. I think once we get past that, however that works out, then I think we can move forward and rightfully focus on what is our future. I've been coming to Nantucket since the early 70s. It has changed so much in the last 5-10 years. It's not what it was many years ago. And change is good. Change happens. But I don't think we're ready to, the dust hasn't settled yet. We're not ready to sit down and say, what is the future? And I think that's what's the underlying issue in the whole STR debate. Because if we go back to talk about, yes, we are representing non-voting taxpayers, and a lot want STRs and as much as, as often as they wish. But at the same time, there are quite a number of non-voting taxpayers who don't want things changed, who are more of what you would call a preservationist. So I think between the two camps, hopefully we can create some kind of a future where there is some preservation of what makes Nantucket very special, and moving forward into, the next century. But it's going to take some time once we get some major things resolved, such as the STR issue.
I have a question about back to the civic association and the neighborhood associations. Is every home in the town included in one neighborhood
In
association?
the Nantucket town itself, there's the Brant Point.
Yeah, I mean, I live in town, and I'm not aware
So
that
there are
there's,
two that you could join.
well, no, I mean, I read all the newspapers and newsletters, and I'm pretty active, and I wasn't aware there was any. I've heard of the Sconset and the Monomoy and the Madaket and the Brant Point, but
Town Nevers.
Yeah,
And
there's one called Town,
I mean.
Yeah, and towns working
Yeah.
on an area
the
plan.
Town
But that's the
Association.
point, though, is Mr. Communications,
Yeah.
we need to do a better job of getting
Well,
that information.
If I could say one thing, I think we could coordinate better with the Nantucket Civic League that has all 40 civic associations under their umbrella.
40?
How do we do that?
Well,
Even that's.
we include Peter and all of us on mailings that they do. They have board meetings every month. They have an annual meeting in September. They have 2 presidents' councils, and actually, I think personally, I think it would be great if Peter in their positions were one of their guest speakers, because they have all the same guest speakers that we do. Yeah, I've seen them twice, over and over. And I think it's great. And the idea of the president is to share all that information with their own civic group, but you know, we have a website and we disseminate things constantly. Monomoy is too, but
Tom Nevers does too.
Tom Nevers does a great job, Mattakit does. So your group, they don't always show
I
up.
mean,
for the
I don't
civic.
even know who to ask.
Where they gather.
So I
Steve.
that's something I can bring up and have them.
Is there a mid-island group?
Yeah,
Steve,
the one group
Steve,
visits first.
I can tell Steve Perlman that there are some neighborhoods on the island that are not represented by any group that belongs to the Civic Association. Because I hear that comment from a couple of members of the Coastal Resiliency Committee who say, when we're talking about civic associations, they say, yeah, but our neighborhood is not covered by any. So there are a handful of groups that are not covered by one of the members of the Civic Association.
Can I
Is,
ask about
Lynn, I have a question for Lynn.
Sure.
Lynn, is there one for the historic district? That's where I live.
So there is one for town and it would include the historic district. So
That's right.
so I'll try and get a map
Okay.
from
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
from the two presidents, and
Yes.
Kathy, you might even.
Yeah,
Are you
I know the
still-
town one, with the town one, it's hard to find out who is the person you contact for that. It's
Yeah,
very hard to
so-
find out.
so-
I with the historic district as
Okay.
well.
So we'll get information back for you.
Good.
Thank you
Because
very much.
It would be helpful because when you think Sconset is 90% non-resident
Well, that was
taxpayers,
exactly the point
Monomoy,
where the-
pretty much
of our
70 to
constituents.
80. So
Yeah.
yes, we dovetail very nicely with them. They're very good at disseminating information, but they need the member list to make it work. And so you need Gmail accounts and you need websites, and not all of them do that.
Can I
Let
ask
me
a question,
go back,
Peter?
yeah, Peter, Lynn, you'd mentioned earlier in this discussion about planning at the very local level, and is it a change where the planning board is going to assign who the planners are for each one of these areas on the island, or?
Going forward, if they're doing an area plan, yes, they would be the ones who decide, and they would adopt open meetings, which when I did mine with my group, we were not required by Andrew Borst because he said it's a revision, it's an update. But if you've never had one, then it has to be an open plan. But you also have to mandate that you provide public meetings for comments, that we had surveys that went out, we shared comments, we got more feedback, we had a draft that got feedback. So it is an interaction with your constituents, and not everyone who is a member commented. We had people who were non-members who could comment. So you needed something like, we have Next Door Sconset, Kathy posts. I know you do things for Tom Nevers, and that is really the answer for all of Nantucket, for each area to have a local thing that responds for just the town of Nantucket is Next Door Nantucket. And you post concerns, stories, you can sell things, and you get a lot of feedback from that. So they're
Lost dogs.
lost dogs. There are levels of communication that we're not part of unless you're part of a civic association.
Right, and the civic association, by definition, includes the residents and the non-residents
Yes.
as well, so it's the neighborhood.
Peter, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to study the document, but I'm just curious when the last strategic plan came out. And oftentimes strategic plans are just a, pretty picture and nothing gets done and nothing.
It's a Massachusetts law. You
I
have
understand.
to-
No, I understand. You gotta do, and you gotta do it, but it then goes in the trash, basically.
It came out just several years ago, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, said what?
The last one was several years ago.
If one looks at the last strategic
Yeah,
plan,
well,
has anything happened,
I think it was actually 2010. It's to be done every 10 years, but it's not done
but what is
in
the,
10 years.
you could
It's
do,
still
but what is the
dragging on.
effect? What is the effect? That's what I'm curious about.
It's to guide the planning board,
And then,
the select board.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It doesn't
I
work
think
that
it's,
way.
yeah, I just, exactly.
I think it's window washing. Here's the pretty plan.
That is very nice.
Cover sheet of the pretty plan. And it says on page 4 that the planning timeline started in October 2018. And it seems like there's every couple of years, it's either updated or amended, and it looks like it's time for a major redo this year, and that's why they have to meet. But it sounds more like they're trying to refocus, but this is not a plan that has the effect of law. It's rather, what are we thinking about doing, and then what have we accomplished over the years? And
It's very aspirational, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aspirational.
yeah, exactly. So I think we maybe are toward an end of this, but there are probably some takeaways that we need to follow up at some point in the future. Because what occurs to me is, and this is going to sound like, where have you been, Peter? That these neighborhood associations, what I'll call them, neighborhood associations, are probably one of the best ways for non-voting taxpayers to be involved in ideas that eventually percolate up and may have some effect on what happens in the town. And but it sounds like there's a lot of non-voting taxpayer that's there. We don't want to take away from any of that, but make the best use of it to inform ourselves as possible. And I think the recent sort of reinvigoration of the membership of this committee helps to do it, because we have a broader geographic representation, and it includes people who have been actively involved in their neighborhood associations, which is good. So that would be that. What I had hoped to
2018 is what we said.
And maybe just the PR focus. We've made, I think, great strides with our PR focus this year, and I know Patty and Steve have raised issues of how we most effectively go forward to, I guess, do more than have somebody lighting a fire under the inky and the current from time to time to say we have a meeting. And so maybe you have some ideas about what our next steps are, what the next steps is you want to pursue.
I can speak briefly, and Curtis came here even though he didn't read it in the Inky or the Current or the or Daybreak. But we have had some success, and this time I sent something out on Wednesday morning, and nobody picked it up. Well, it wasn't too late for the online publications, but I think ultimately what we want to do is, and Gary has sort of been helpful in sort of making me think about this, that we represent not just non-voting taxpayers, but we represent residents and taxpayers. And many of the things that not all, but many of the things we want to do are of interest to residents as well. So that's sort of in my thinking, at least. But I think where appropriate, and I don't think we want to do this all the time, but where appropriate, we ought to become more active in terms of letters to the editor or op-eds. And I think all three of the publications would be happy to run things where I think our view is unique. I don't know that that we want to get involved in every issue that the town faces, but things that are important to the people we represent are. But anyway, that's just a thought. But and I do look forward to sort of figuring out what the Civic Association does and how to represent everyone who is a non-voting taxpayer.
I think in the past, this committee, and this is really before I became involved, was much more tied in with the Civic Association. I think that the people were, Bill Sherman, who was on this committee for many, many years, and I think was instrumental in the formation of the committee, was much more attentive to relationships with the Civic Association, the Nantucket Town Association, and what have you. And that's something, now that we have a broader membership, that we can probably devote some time and effort by making getting volunteers and making some assignments, which would be good. Yeah. Patty?
Oh, well, I just wanted to add to Steve's comment. I almost think we need to have somewhat of a discussion about our strategic plans and goals, because there are things we could do from an institutional, if you will, basis where we would, I would love to see us get in the current and say something like, do we know that we have a civic association? Are you part of it? Do you know where to go? Do you know we have a non-voter committee? And I have heard too often that this committee wasn't particularly, to Scott's coining of the phrase, actionable items, that we might bring knowledge and understanding to the people in the room about what goes on in the various parts of our government, but we don't carry that further to our constituents. And we also don't spend a lot of time listening to our constituents. So it's, again, just the 14 people in the room. And to me, that would be a strategic thing for us to accomplish. It can say accomplish strategic, but something to really work on. And that, I think I talked to, do you know Charlie Scott?
So very well.
Yeah, he was delightful in welcoming, like a couple of the civics groups do surveys, Monomoy one. He's welcoming. He said the more facts we get to understanding, like if we can say, well, we talked to 2,000 voters, and those 2,000 voters, so almost like a poll, those 2,000 voters really feel like da 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 or whatever, but we have some factual understanding of what the public wants. It's not what we think necessarily in the room, what our intuition says. There's some fact base. So I would like to see us consider a strategic plan in terms of the communication to better our community. Because let's face it, people come here on vacation and they check out. But then when there are some issues like the noise next door or short-term rentals, they want to know more about it. And then they realize, well, we're non-voters, we have no rights and nobody wants to listen to us anyway. I would have to say, and this is intuitive, a majority of people that are non-voters don't know that this committee exists. And if there's any, if they're given any voice for all the taxes they paid, I think it's a perceptual, view of our constituents that they are negligible in the whole scheme of things. And I think it's a shared idea because we don't have a vote, but we never will, and explaining that to people.
No,
I just think we can spend more time communicating what we do and what we stand for and what we actually accomplish.
Donna?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Patty, and I think we're in the process of it. I'm a fairly new member, and I was going to say this earlier, so I'll say it now. This has been a very rewarding experience for me. I've only been on it for a number of months, and I think that some of our new members are bringing, if you will, additional energy. New viewpoints is what Peter Halley was saying. And also the folks who have been doing this for years, such as Gary and Don, and Bill, and forgive me if I'm leaving people out, Peter Kahn. You folks have been doing this for a while, so it's a learning experience also. And you're sharing your years of experience on this committee. Patty, to your point, and I've been in advertising, had been in advertising for quite a few years. I think what you and
Steve.
what Steve are doing, it's beginning, it's happening. It doesn't happen overnight. And everything is going into the wire now, which is terrific. We're getting a sense of, as I call it, actionability. I know Scott, it's like, I like that word because I use it a lot in what I've done in the past and what I'm, hope to do here. It takes time. And we are trying to get on to the town council study. That is very important. As Curtis, as much as I respect what you're doing, I'm 100% behind it, but our component is missing at this point, and we need to be on that committee in some fashion. But we're moving ahead. People are becoming aware of it. I didn't know about this committee. I was researching online. How could I get involved in the town of Nantucket? And I stumbled upon this committee, and it sounded just right. So I think we're growing. And Lynn, to bring up this whole idea about the civic association, I never knew that existed. And now we're going to have contacts, and perhaps we can make contributions in our own neighborhoods. We're growing, and that's the important thing.
Okay, good. Anybody else? I appreciate these comments. I don't see it.
Just one
Yep.
thought. I think what was done in terms of promoting our committee in the Inky and the current and et cetera is great, and I'm sure is getting increased awareness of our organization. One of the problems, though, is that if we try to measure that, and we see that in all of our meetings we had 1 or 2 or 3 non-members attend, my reaction would be, well, we've gotten some notice out there, but it's not been terribly effective. And I think part of that is that our meeting days and times are not very amenable to most of the non-resident taxpayers who are likely to potentially attend our meetings. Since they're non-residents, since many of them are here weekends or long weekends or whatever, having a meeting Saturday morning is not amenable to when they're having their family or their grandkids or their kids or whatever. And I think we should look into thinking about how do we reschedule these meetings during the summer season so that it is available to a larger number of people. And it might be a Wednesday evening or Tuesday evening or whatever, so that more people who might be interested would potentially attend. Because, Sunday morning, if people want to be out fishing or at the golf course or with their kids, grandkids at the beach. And I think we need to think about that going forward.
Yeah, I think that people, I wouldn't come to these meetings if I wasn't on the committee unless I felt so strongly about an issue and my grandkids weren't here and I had nothing else to do. So, I think if we get, we got 7 people at a couple meetings, that blew me away. Most people just aren't interested unless it really affects them personally, is my view. But I don't object to moving meetings to a different time. I think that would, but I'm not sure that the general public would enjoy sitting through a 2-hour meeting where we talk about strategic plans or.
But we have to have a special guest speaker
right.
or whatever.
And when there have been speakers, there have been people who are interested and who've come.
It'd be great if we could take the speaker section and keep it upload it to our page so that you could hit viewing anytime that you could. That's a,
Yeah, the whole meeting is on
I
there.
mean, almost pull it out,
yeah,
as a
just
separate.
pull out the speaker, because that is the value to the non-resident taxpayer. They don't necessarily want to hear what we're talking about, but the speakers, they don't have access to unless they're going to the Civic Association meeting where you have a guest speaker. And
Yeah, it's just, we don't have a page. We don't have any
we have
control.
one page
and we have
with
no
your
control
name.
over
That's it.
Yeah, and I have no control over it.
Yeah. That would be great.
Let me suggest this. The
Under your agenda.
takeaway from this, because I think the speaker point is a good point.
They posted.
Number one. Number two, I think 7 is great. If we routinely had 8 or 9 people attending our meetings, we'd probably be on some reality television network. Yeah, and I think we could compare ourselves. I mean, the select board sometimes
Big brother on
but it would be interesting to because all these are recorded now, right? To just go over the last year and take sort of a portrait shot of our various speakers and put them on one page and say, you know, what did we do last year, or what are we going to do next year? We heard from all these people, and you can too.
Good idea.
You know, here are our schedule of meetings for the next year, and we'll let you know who's speaking when, because it almost becomes like a forum, another kind of forum, but one at a time. So that's my PR idea. I don't know whether it's a good one or a bad one, but it's something we might want to consider.
Peter, I think that's an excellent idea, and that also would help build the template you're talking about, because you're planning everything. We are planning everything, the speaker series.
Yeah.
We need to get the town to go along with that, because they control those web pages. We don't have any control over them. And they use a software product to post agendas and minutes, and that's all that their system does. And so when I don't post anything out there, I have to go through the town.
Right.
And give them the information, and then they post it, and I have to do it by a certain date and time, or it's a legal meeting. So they have very tight control over it. I mean, it took 6 months just to get the new names of the members put out there. So, you know, we could try,
And
for
that's
sure,
assuming the voters
Yeah.
even know about
but,
this.
you know, I think that we can try.
So let me draw this to a close, because I was thinking this could be a short meeting, but
Yeah, I'm supposed to be at the Oregon Club.
when is our next meeting?
November 4th,
November 4th. November 4th, the 7th is the town meeting, special town meeting. Let me suggest this. For November 4th, should we have a speaker, or should we just finish with the subjects that we're dealing with today, and mainly we'll know then what all the comments were on the STR thing, and be able to make any last minute plan we need to do. Or is it November 4th even a necessary meeting day?
I just think it'd be, we have an outgoing police chief who's been here
Yeah,
for
that's great.
ever and ever. And I think it'd just be great to hear from him before he rides off into the sunset. Doesn't have to be that date, but
Yeah.
he's leaving pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I'll get back in touch with him and ask him if he can come on November 4th. I mean, a thing that I was thinking to ask him to do, but I thought twice about it, and I'm not sure, is it's kind of like the presidential note in the Resolute desk. What
Right.
would you what note would you leave for your successor?
Why not?
Yeah.
Ask him. Ask him.
Okay, I will ask him. I don't know.
Start updating your resume.
I think I'm going to be overseas on that date, so it could be Peter. If you're available, you know, I'll tune in from where but it'll be 6 hours.
All right.
Are we definitely not speaking at town meeting?
No, we are. Well, I'm sorry, definitely not.
We're definitely considering it. but unless there is something specific to speak about, I'm not going to. I don't think
I say
we have
that.
anything to say in general on the subject of this special town meeting, other than what we've already discussed today on the STRs.
I'm just bringing it up because I agree with you that we don't want to say anything that would, that we really don't stand for or is not within our realm, but given the fact that we have very limited ability to do anything of action, I would think we should, at every single town meeting, make our presence known in one shape or form. And maybe we could just toss around some of those ideas.
Have you been to a town meeting, Patty?
Am I going to town meeting?
Have you been to a town meeting?
Have I been to a town meeting?
Yeah, this one here. I've been there.
I've been.
And I've watched them, and as Curtis said before, there's 104 articles, and the last thing that I think we want to do is address this town meeting, because it's just more time for people, more babysitting fees, and the only reason to appear at a town meeting is if we have something very, very relevant to say on a matter, and we think we may be able to persuade the voters with respect to that matter by putting in our 2 cents. I just don't think that's it's just not a forum where people come and make speeches.
As long as we get Sarah Alger's acknowledgement ahead of time that she will rule out of order.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think somebody needs to be there to protect us.
I will be there.
Peter, can I just go back to the November 4th meeting if the police chief can't come or doesn't want to come? We had some other potential speakers on the list, like the land bank or the head of the Realtors Association, and I think those are all issues that we would want to hear about and would bring more people to log into the meeting, but would sort of help us understand more of the issues that are going on if the police chief can't come.
I agree.
I will try to line up somebody else then. Go back to police chief number 1, the land bank person number 2, and real estate association.
Any day.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait, one more thing, Peter, just so you know, I will be on an airplane
Oh, geez.
on this flying here
On the 4th?
on the 4th. I'll be landing in Logan at 9:45.
That's not gonna be work.
So,
I
You
can't
can
do
get
this.
your conference room.
So I can do I can be in the meeting, but I can't imagine I could run it from Logan Airport in the middle of
And I can't.
the day, so
Maybe we ought to change the date.
I just want to say that, because I didn't know you were gonna be overseas.
Week earlier, maybe. Although that a week earlier, I'm going to be either on a plane or
How about just a matter of date? We'll take Gene's suggestion and change the date, the day of the week. How about, is there anything earlier that week, just earlier, that you're not flying Friday or
I
Thursday?
have to make it.
Yeah, I could do it during the week.
What about the following week?
Well, we want to do it before I think you want to do it before the
Before
town
town
meeting,
meeting,
just to
yeah,
have any last minute things. Town meeting's Tuesday.
Can anybody send out a scheduling thing? One of these things where you take a vote as to who's available on the date?
Yeah.
Call.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
How about, but I think,
And then we could try the meeting at a different
That's
time.
the point,
maybe.
maybe some evening that week before.
Yeah.
Just not Wednesday,
Okay.
because that's the select board,
Oh,
so you
yeah,
don't want to,
confront, you want to, right.
Yeah, okay, I'll put it, so.
Maybe Thursday, why not just do it right now? Thursday, what's the Thursday? Because Friday, you don't want to do a Friday night, people.
Thursday's the 2nd,
Okay, well, how about that Thursday evening? Or Thursday, how about?
Thursday evening,
What day? Thursday,
November 2nd.
November 2nd.
Oh, I'm in a football game.
11. The Thursday evenings, I'm going to be
Yeah, that's not
in
gonna work for me. We're playing Wake Forest.
November 2. I'll be going to be in London, and so
Yeah.
hours.
So that's not gonna work.
That's not
But you
good.
can join it.
I could do it earlier in the day, but not Thursday evening.
Oh, I can't do it during the day.
let's just send a doodle around and see what we can do early that week. maybe.
Send a calendar thing.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Oh, that's so much. back and
You have to
forth.
make a call
You're
before.
running, he's
Well-
on your,
I guess so.
and when, you can't do.
I can't do
the
Thursday.
Second early.
I can't do the second either.
Earlier in the day, but
What about like 10
And-
o'clock,
I could do that. 10 o'clock,
I can't, no, I can't.
9
Yeah.
o'clock?
9 o'clock I could do, yeah, I could do that. I could do that in the morning. I could do in the
What
morning.
day you talking about?
Thursday in the morning, though, November 2nd.
I
No,
can't.
I'm on a plane all day. I'm on a plane to Florida, so.
All right, why don't we just do the doodle and see what shows up?
Yeah, I mean, I could do the 4th, but I have to
Okay.
wait till I get
All
it.
right, let's do that.
Or do, yeah.
Maybe Sunday,
Or the 6th, which is
or maybe the Monday before the
Monday.
Tuesday's the town meeting.
Yeah, we could do Monday, the 6th also. I'll put it all those dates.
All right. Okay. all right.
Okay, sorry about that, but I
No
just
problem.
didn't wanna, anybody to assume I could do this.
No, I'm glad you did it, because I certainly can't
Yeah, okay, so now you can move to.
adjourn. You have
Peter?
any motions, Peter?
He's
He's
gone.
on the phone. He's on the phone, he's muted.
Oh,
You
So-
can make a motion.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
move that we adjourn. Have a Second.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
hi, folks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay,
He doesn't seem to mind.
no.
Yeah,
I think-
start.
He just
over.
waves,
Um,
say bye.
Look, you going back to the
Yeah.
project?
I put
Yeah.